Welcome to the Elokus channel. This is class number 8 in the Maamor Chukas 5672, which is the 7th discourse in the great book B'Shoshek Dimu 5672, and this is class number 3 in chapter 27. So we learned in the last class, we were learning. He's beginning to explain why we needed these two tzimtzumim. One is affecting the first level of the Or Ein Sof, which is the Or Ein Sof on a level of Sfiros Ein Kates, where there is no end to the Sfirot, which is a revelation where Hashem is revealing himself, but not to anybody in particular. And the second tzimtzum affects the Esa Sfiros Hagnuzos, where the Or Ein Sof is slightly limiting or defining itself to become a potential, so to speak, to create or to emanate 10 particular spheres, which is what we call the whole time Esa Sfiros Hagnuzos, the 10 hidden spheres. And the second symptom is to break that down, that the 10 spheres are not just one, all unified as one, but each one comes out individually. And that the difference between the two tzimtzumim, as we learned earlier, the first symptom is removing that potential from being revealed completely, the infinite potential, and the second symptom is in a manner of miyut. It's just a diminishment. It's not like a complete removal. It's like breaking a word up, so you have a little bit of the content of the word in each letter in the pieces. Okay, so we were learning yesterday. In the earlier class, what did we learn? We learned, in order to explain this, he's explaining how the two levels of Or Ein Sof are really the source of what we usually refer to as Soviv Kalalman, the encompassing light of God. God, as he is bigger than the creation, and he's cradling the creation from above it, from beyond it, or as we explained many times, it doesn't mean above in distance, he's everywhere, but in a way that he's not adjusting himself to be felt within the corridors of creation, within the walls of creation, within the narrow constraints and definitions of creation. And then there is a level of where he does manifest and express himself into the details and into the particular phenomena of all the particular creations. Hashem is adjusting. That's Mamala Kalam. So we were learning that in the Or Ein Sof, before the Tzimtzum, there's a shoresh for both these lights. The shoresh of the Mamala Kalalman is in the Esa Sfiros Hagnuzos, and the shoresh for the Soviv Kalalman is in what he referred to as the Or Ein Sof Habli Gavul Mamish, in the infinite light that is limitless, literally. But he's explaining that he's trying to explain to us that the Esa Sfiros Hagnuzos cannot be even noticed, or even it doesn't have any existence while the greater Or Ein Sof is present and revealed, because it's like the nullification of the ray of the sun while it's in the sun. One ray of the sun is explained in Chassidus. I didn't really explain this in the last class, but I thought it was kind of obvious, because those who learn Chassidus know this, Marshall, a lot, that a ray of the sun can be very, very powerful, very bright, so much so that we squint, we can't see. The sun is in our eye. A ray of the sun is coming right at us. Even physically, it can be very uncomfortable, it can be hot, and it can even burn a person, God forbid. Get a sunburn, very intense. The rays of the sun, very intense. But that very ray, if you were to trace it up into the sun, the ray would be 1,000,000 times stronger in the sun itself. I don't know how many times stronger, in terms of its heat, in terms of its brightness, but you wouldn't notice it at all, because when it's in the source, the ray is nothing. So the same is also that this more narrower element of the Or Ein Sof, which is the source of the Mamala Kalalman, is nothing while it's still in the Or Ein Sof, in the greater Or Ein Sof. However, in the last class we learned that although it is derived the Mamala Kalam and the Orha, the Esespheres Agnuzais, is completely pulled out and plucked like a bucket of water from the ocean, from the bigger, infinite, endless, and boundless potential. It's not just piecing off a piece of the Or Ein Sof, as he referred to it, that it's drawn from the chitzonius of the Or Ein Sof. You take some of that potential and slice off a potential for 10 spheres, but rather it really is, it's an entity unto its own. But the way it evolves is through the higher level of the Or Ein Sof emerges the lower level. And we gave the example of how when Yitzchak, Isaac, contains Yaakov, but Yaakov is not just a piece of Yitzchak. Yaakov is its own phenomenon. And when God gave Yitzchak, gave Avram Yitzchak, he gave him Yitzchak and Yaakov, not only that Yaakov will be a piece of Yitzchak, but Yaakov as a separate entity. But yet Yaakov will not evolve directly, only through Yitzchak's neshama. Basically, you can use that example in every grandson, every human being that's coming through an ancestor who, like, there's a line here, but the line, but each one stands for itself as well. So this idea that that God intends the Or Pnimi, when he's emanating the Or Ein Sof, he has an intention that there will be an Or Pnimi that will be segregated, so to speak, from the general power of the Or Ein Sof. So in a sense, it's not exactly the same light, but yet it's enough the same light that we say that one is coming from the other, and therefore, before it separates, it's indifferentiable and unnoticeable and completely lost in its source, like the ray of the sun in the sun. Although it has a purpose and it has an entity on its own, it's not only a piece of what precedes it. So he's going to find a halachic example for this, a mitzvah that illustrates this. Beautiful thing. So let's take a look over here. As stated elsewhere, regarding the fringes that we wear, the mitzvah of tzitzis, the fringes that we wear, Jewish men wear on their talit, on their four-cornered garment. So the rule over there is that you have a garment. The garment has four corners, and at the corner you put on these strings. So the halacha is that the strings have to be made up of the same material as the garment, and primarily the corners of the garment. If you have a garment where the garment is, let's say, made out of leather, but the corners of the garment, you have pieces of wool. Every corner that is there is pieces of wool. So then the tzitzis fringes have to be made out of wool. And if you have the corners are made up of polyester, then the tzitzis should be made up of that of polyester as well. Each time the fringes should be me'ein hakanaf. They have to be similar to the type of the corner of the garment of what the garment was. It has to be the same material. However, although it's the same material, it's not born from the material. It's added on. You're taking separate wool, strings of wool, threads of wool, and you're attaching it. Meaning it's the same type, but not literally an extension of it. Now, what is this reflecting? Why is this way? Because we know that the talis represents in the context of the mitzvah, the holy talit that we wear, the holy garment, that is in a symbolization, and it captures, not just symbolized. In the talis goes in the holiness of the Soviv Kalalman, of the encompassing light of God that wraps itself around the whole world, which in its root of roots, as we're discussing over here, is the Or Ein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum, the higher level of the Or Ein Sof, before God has a will to shine it to a recipient. And that's why it's higher, it's infinite, it wraps around the world, it's above it all. The tzitzis represent already a more targeted light. It therefore represents the mamala kalam, the indwelling light. Now, since the indwelling light is born out of the sovev light, that's the reason why the tzitzis has to be of the same type. But since it's not totally from the same, because from the very get-go, God intends that there should be an indwelling light. It's not like he emanates an infinite potential. And then somehow or another, from the external part of that, it separates somewhat of that potential to create the 10 sefirot, to bring forth to emanate 10 sefirot. It's not that way. There is the mamala kalam has its own root and source in the intention of the mashpia, in the intention of the ma'or. Mashpia means the influencer, ma'or means the source of light. But yet, just like we said earlier, Yaakov is his independent thing from Yitzchak. However, the way it emerges is through, and Yaakov is first embedded in Yitzchak, and then he comes out separately. In the same is also the Mamala Kalam, and it's first embedded in the Sovikam. If it would be of the same, literally of the same stock, then the halacha would be that you have to create a garment, and when you're creating the original garment, you have to extend in the corner some of the threads of the garment to go further. That would mean that the mamale, the indwelling light, is completely the same of, it's a narrowing of the sovev light. It's a limiting, a self-limitation, if you might say, of that other words, sovev light. But the fact that the halacha is that the tzitzis is not a threads from the talit. They're separate threads that are made separately, and they're added to the talus, is showing that it has its own independent entity. But yet, the fact that it has to be from the same type is indicative of the idea that one is coming from the other, which means it's born from the other. And therefore, in the analogy, in terms of the when we're comparing it to above, as long as the talit, as long as the infinite light is very, very much present, you won't notice the strings. Okay, that's the idea. They have to be from the type of the kanaf. They're not literally from the kanaf. The kanaf means the edge of the talit itself, of the garment, which spiritually represents what we call the sovev kalama, which is called levush malchus. It's the garment of kingship. When we're saying malchus over here, we mean malchus on the highest levels, malchus of the Ein Sof. And that's the sovev kalam. Alamed beis chutin, and the 32 strands. Why are we saying 32? Because how many tzitzis do you have? There are four corners. Each one has strings. 8 strings on each one. 8 times 4 is 32. Lamed beis chutin, the tzitzis and the 32 strand of the tzitzis, Shem Lamed represent Lamed beis nesivas chachma. They represent the 32 paths of wisdom, which is the beginning of indwelling light. Because chachma is the first sphera in which there is already some form of a light going into a vessel. Chachma is already the first of the 10 indwelling spheras. And that's why it's strings, narrow strings representing a light that is narrowing so it can go into a vessel. Shem Lamed beis nesivas chachma, the bisharshan, that in their source, hana esa spheras agnuzais. Where does the chachma, what's the first experience of chachma? Is chachma as it is in the Or Ein Sof, which is in the esa spheras agnuzais. Shayrish bechenas mamala kalam. That's the root of the mamalakam. So the tzitzis in the very, very beginning source is the 10 spheres agnuzais, the 10 hidden spheres. That is embedded in the Or Ein Sof. The talis is the Or Ein Sof itself, higher than the 10 spheres agnuzais. So what are they? What do we find? Einon ma knaf mamish. They're not literally the knaf itself. It's not like you're pulling forth these strings from the kanav. Which would mean that it's just a break off of a piece, so to speak, of the Orein Sof, of the infinite light that is limitless. That it's not. Nevertheless, they're tied. They're unified with the kanaf. Then min kanaf. They have to be from the same type. Which tells you that it is really one is derived, one evolves from the other. And that will explain why we need the tzimtzum in the Orein, the higher level of the Orein Sof has to be completely removed, because when this light is contained in its mother, when the baby is contained in its mother, even though it's an independent entity, the baby, but when it's still within the source, it's indifferentiatable, undetectable. It doesn't have an existence at all, like the ray of the sun in the sun. We're going to skip for now the parentheses. We'll come back to it. It's a pretty long. Where is it over here? Where does this parentheses end? Let's see. This is where we are. We can say that the second dimension of Orein Sof, the strings, the esespheres agnuzais, we can say this is called the latter element of the Orein Sof. It's like to say like this, that the Orein Sof, there's Orein Sof, and then there is the latter element of the Orein Sof. And the very, very last expression of pure Orein Sof is the esespheres agnuzais. But because it's the last and final expression of the Orein Sof, for that reason, as long as the non-last expression of the Orein Sof, the earlier, prior state of the Orein Sof is present, this last extension of Orein Sof would not be discernible. Now I was going to explain this idea that this is called, that the esespheres agnuzais is called the lowest level of the Orein Sof, because he's going to ask, how can you even differentiate in Orein Sof between levels? But first, like it says in Eitz Chaim, Portal 41, it says in the Arizal, Be'inyan Atik, regarding the level called Atik Yomin, which is the innermost of the Keter, of the level of Keser, which, by the way, again, let's remember, is lower than what we're talking over here, because all these levels, Atik, and it's all after the Tzimtzum. But yet, regarding Atik, we find this language, we find this usage, this verbiage of what? It's the lowest level, it's the lowest manifestation, Shvela means low, Shebe Ein Sof, that is in the Ein Sof. Now we are going to learn this parenthesis. You're going to ask, well, we're not talking about Atik. We're talking over here about the esespheres agnuzais that's higher than what we call Atik, than the Ancient of Days. But he says, V'kvar nizbar le'el Perek tezvav. Again, he's referencing what we learned in chapter 15. The esespheres agnuzais, that the 10 spheres of Hagnuzais are sometimes referred to as Atik. Hempchenas Atik the Adam Kadmon are the Atik level. Remember, we had that whole discussion. Is the Atik level of Adam Kadmon. Therefore, the rules and the definitions that apply to Atik, it means the regular Atik that we're referring to when we usually say Atik, it's the Atik, it's the pnimiyat of the Keser, it's the innermost of the crown of Atzilos. That's the regular Atik. We are talking about over here much higher. We're talking about the Atik of Adam Kadmon. The Atik of Adam Kadmon is the esespheres agnuzais that is before the Tzimtzum and the Orein Sof. But what does that tell you? That the general strokes, the general ideas that we apply to Atik can definitely be applied, which is a very lofty application. What's the lofty application? That it is the achroina, is the latter, it's the most lowest manifestation of Orein Sof. So we can apply it as here as well, that that this is considered b'chinas achroina sheba or Ein Sof, the last level of the or Ein Sof. The l'chura ain't a moving, but he asks the question: how can you say the last level? How can you even split it? Ma shayach loima b'chinas achroina. How is it possible to say achroina, something last? B'davar she'ein by rosh v'soif, something that doesn't have a beginning and it doesn't have an end. Like it says in Eitz Chaim in the beginning, the ba'orin soif, that he's strengthening his question, that in the orin soif, shoyim amala makam acholol, that was first filling the entire space of the empty space where God creates, which is what we're talking about right now. We're talking about orin sof. It says there explicitly, loy haya by rosh v'soif, doesn't have a beginning, it doesn't have an end. Umay lamata doesn't have an up and it doesn't have down. Im kain, and if so, ma shayach b'zeh b'chinas achrona, what can we call it? Achrona. We call it the last level. So for that he brings umevur b'lukuti Torah b'bir d'shchayrani. So, however, in the Lukuti Torah from the Alter Rebbe, in the Bir Shchayrani, which he referenced earlier, he explained the Hainu b'chinas ha'oira ein sof. That it says that there's no this that Eitz Chaim says there's no my lamata roish v'soif, there's no up and down, beginning and end. That's in Ein Sof itself. But in the Or Ein Sof, in the light of the Ein Sof, since it's an emanation, over there it's possible to say, even if it's the Or Ein Sof, even if it's before the Kav, you could already speak of a higher level of light and a lower level of light. That means the pnimius of the light, where it's closer to the source, where it's still in the state of emerging from the Ma'or, and the more external part of it, so to speak. The B'chinas Or Ein Sof, the Liyoisei B'chinas Or V'ziv Bilvad, since it's a light and a ray alone, Harei Zeh B'chinas Achroina. So, in Lukuti Torah it says that the entire Or, there's Ein Sof and there's the Or Ein Sof. Since over there in Lukuti Torah he says that the entire realm of Or Ein Sof is called Achroina, B'chinas Achroina of the Ein Sof. Because what is Ein Sof is that he is Ein Sof. What's Or Ein Sof? That he can reveal his Ein Sofness. He can illuminate his Ein Sofness. Every illumination and every revelation of something is already considered external. It's Achrona. He doesn't need it for himself. He doesn't have to reveal that he's Ein Sof. So it's already a display of his Ein Sofness. Every display is called already Chitzonius. It's called external, and therefore it's called Achrona, the latter element of the Ein Sof. According to this understanding, then even the higher level of the Or Ein Sof that we're talking about earlier, Spheros Ein Kate, since we're talking about a revelation, a display of his Ein Sof, then that's also B'chinas Achroina. So that's why he explains over here, no. You're right. In Or Ein Sof itself, it's possible to talk about first and last. And in general, we say that the fact that it's Or, it's already considered Achroina. However, in Lukuti Torah over there, he explains that the real element of Achroina in the Or Ein Sof is the Or Ein Sof B that we discussed, which means Or Ein Sof, when Or Ein Sof is already narrowing itself down to 10 spheres agnuzas. The Sham, and over there, that's what he's continuing. If you look further over there, the Masha Kasa be'Eitz Chaim, this that it says in Eitz Chaim, B'chinas hayoyser Achroina, the most last level of the Or Ein Sof, Eina Kavana. The intention is not al klolos or on the general light. Remember, that would be equivalent to the talis itself, to the source of the soviv kalam, and to the spheros enkate, to the infinite. That's not what's called hayoyser achroina. Kiyim, rather shemibchinas achroina shebaor, from the latter element of light in general, which is called ladder, nimshach liyos atik. From there, it's drawn something that's called a source for creation. Atik means removed, but at the same time, it's already the crown for the creations. That which in our case is Esesphiras Agnuzos, that is called the Achroina element of the Or Ein Sof. The Yeshloimer, that's what he says over there. and which the Rebbe Rashab over here interprets, the Yeshloim Ashazeh B'chinas Esas Sfiras Hagnuzos, that this is the 10 hidden Sfiras, Shehu Inyan Eskalalos B'chinas Mamala Kalalman, Sheba Orein Seif HaSoiv Kalalman. This is the Mamala Kalalman light that is included in the Orein Sof, in the Soiv Kalalman light. This is the latter element, that's the most external element, so to speak, of the Orein Sof. But it's in a state of eskalolus. The inyan eskalolus azois. What does eskalolus mean? Humasha orein soif abli gvul means that the orein soif that's bli gvul shir ba'atzmai is estimating within himself ha'amshacha shebebchinas gvul. We're still in the orein soif, and he's estimating to emanate, or so to speak, to produce a light that will be received by the creation. This hashara, this is the last stage in the Orein Sof. This is what we've been referring to the whole time as aloy saratzain. Now this is this estimation. That's in the Orein Sof that is infinite. This is considered the last element of the Orein Sof. And when it's still in its source, it's not noticeable. It needs to get a little visibility by the Orein Sof fading away, being completely drawn back, allowing this potential to be highlighted. Let's leave it over here. This obviously needs some more elucidation. Be'ezus Hashem, we still have to come back and fill in this parentheses that he mentioned earlier, and to still bring about some more clarity in what we just learned. But the general idea over here is that the Or Hamamala Kalalman, the light that it will eventually be an Or Pnimi, has its already different. It's already something of its own. It has a different flavor, but it's still emanating from something higher, and therefore, while it's in its source, it's not noticed. And then, when there is a hashara, and there is an estimation, and aloy saratzon, and not only that, but then there is a hiding of the light that is above the aloy saratzon, that's when this becomes somewhat a source before the tzimtzum for the actual creation, for the actual Seder Ishtalshalos, the order of evolution. Shall we be, as Hashem, see in the next few classes? Thanks. Well, let's Mashiach be here now, so we actually get to understand one word that we're saying over here.